What's going on, folks? This is gonna be a super quick video. I'm just gonna read this page to you real quick. This guy is claiming that annihilationism is wrong. Okay, have the right to say that, and he's claiming that annihilationists commit heresy by believing that Jesus died. It's really weird. So I'm just gonna read this. Jesus is both human and divine. The correct biblical teaching concerning Jesus is that he has two distinct natures, divine and human. We call this a hypostatic union. There is another very important doctrine called the communicatio idiomatum. This simply means that the attributes of both natures are ascribed to the single person. True, absolutely. In other words, Jesus, the person, claims the attributes of both humanity and divinity. I'm going to skip these references because I just agree with him, and every Christian knows these things. So we see that the single person of Christ exhibited attributes of both humanity and divinity. This is proper biblical theology, and to deny it is to adopt heresy. We need to pause right there. If you're a Protestant, do not use the word heresy. According to the largest church in the world, you're a heretic, and you would be burned at the stake in an earlier stage of Christianity. It is ironic to belong to a sect of Christianity, which is a minority group, which has been killed for being heretics, and also Protestants have very few beliefs in common. We have important beliefs in common, like faith alone, but I mean, Protestants can't even agree on whether we have free will. Do not use the word heresy. It's sad and ironic. Now, moving on. When Mr. Fudge, in reference to Edward Fudge, probably the most famous conditionalist of the 20th century, when Mr. Fudge says that upon a person's physical death his soul ceases to have life, then he must be consistent and affirm that Jesus' human nature also ceased to have life. True. Now we're going to get to the highlighted part, which is wrong. This further means that between Jesus' death and resurrection, he was no longer the God-man because there were no attributes of humanity being ascribed to the single person of Christ. That is what it means to have no life. It means no attributes of personhood are being exhibited at all because they are dead and gone. Okay, so this is where so many arguments break down. Whenever people start making up their own definitions of a word, which is, no offense to liberals, but I'm just going to say this for the benefit of conservative Christians. You hate it when liberals do that. Don't do it yourself. We're just going to go to the dictionary and see what the word life and death means. So we got dictionary. Let's do life to begin with. Life. The condition that distinguishes organisms from inorganic objects and dead organisms, being manifested by growth through metabolism, reproduction, the power of adaptation to environment, through changes originating externally. Number 2 is pretty much the same. Number 3, the animate existence or period of an animate existence of an individual. I'm going to just leave this up, and we're going to put death in here. The act of dying, the end of life, the total and permanent cessation of all the vital functions of an organism. The state of being dead, extinction, destruction. Yeah, that's pretty much all the definitions relevant here. So, what it means to have no life, it doesn't, I mean, he just, what's the word? He submitted his own definition. I reject your definition and submit my own. I don't know what he's talking about. One of the attributes of being a human is the ability to die. When a person dies, it's kind of a matter of, I think, kind of annoying philosophical debate whether they still exist or not. I would say that the person does exist. They're just dead. But they do still exist. Like, I have a body, this belongs to me, and when I die, the body's still going to be around. It will break down over time, that's true, but it, physically speaking, does still exist. To exist does not necessitate life, does it? A rock exists as well. But physical existence and your persistence of your physical existence, by definition, persists after you die. So, I mean, it's just a wild thing to say. Like, it's not wrong to say that Jesus died. If you need a reference, Romans 5:8, God demonstrated his love for us, and that while we were still sinners, he died for us. Isaiah 53, the last verse, I don't remember the verse, I think it's 12, says that he poured his soul out unto death and made intercession for sinners. yes, Jesus did die. I mean, what on earth? I know that he's saying here that, well, his soul ceases to have life. Well, I mean, his whole argument, like his human nature also ceased to have life. Are we saying that a human nature, by definition, has a living soul? Because that doesn't even really make any sense. You know, Genesis 2, verse 7 says, let me actually double check that to make sure I'm citing this correctly. Genesis 2, 7. I'm using let's use, I think it's the NASB. We can use that one. So this one says person, and it says or soul. And that's what it actually says in Hebrew. If you want to go to the interlinear, let's go to Genesis 2:7. Yeah, it says living nephesh. You know, it says being or person, but the core meaning of nephesh is soul. I've actually checked with a rabbi and everything. The core meaning of nephesh is soul, and you can see that in other verses that clearly differentiate the soul from the body. I think it's 1 Kings 17. I want to say it's 22. Yep, the soul of the lad turneth back into his midst, and he liveth. If you want to look this up again in the interlinear, we can do 1 Kings. Yeah, the soul, nephesh, the soul. So it really does say that Adam became a living soul. I mean, Ezekiel, I think it's 18 verse 4, talks about souls dying. Actually, we don't need to look this up right now, but you understand. It does say that souls cannot be alive in the Bible. So it's just wrong to say that that's not true. The Bible does affirm that souls can die. But you have to understand that regardless of whether you agree with me or not, whether you agree that souls can die, cannot be alive, he's claiming that a human nature, by definition, the soul must be alive. But there is no definition in the Bible that says that. He's claiming that. But the burden of proof is upon the claimant. He goes on to say that it means no attributes of personhood are being exhibited at all because they are dead and gone. I don't really get what he means, like no attributes of personhood. I think, again, this is just an issue of him having his own definitions of words. It really comes back to, does a person continue to exist after they die? Well, Jesus did die, so apparently persons do continue to exist after they die. He's tying this whole thing into his soul ceases to have life, that a person by definition must have a soul that is always alive. But where does this come from? Where does this idea, obviously bodies don't have to always be alive, right? So he's claiming that what part of the definition of being a human is having a soul that's always alive. This is not true according to the text of the Bible. Adam was not a living soul until God made him a living soul. We know that, as I just pointed out in Ezekiel 18 verse 4, literally in Hebrew it says, the soul of the person who sins shall die. This is making me think of something else. Irenaeus, since we're talking about heresy, I want to show you this. But as the animal body is certainly not itself the soul, yet has fellowship with the soul as long as God pleases, so the soul herself is not life, but partakes in that life bestowed upon her by God. Wherefore also the prophetic word declares of the first formed man, he became a living soul. Genesis 2:7 teaches us that by the participation of life, the soul became alive, so that the soul and the life which it possesses must be understood as being separate existences. Let's just go to Google real quick, and I want to show you Irenaeus, because you have to understand, we're just going to do Wikipedia really quick. Irenaeus is one of the most, top 5 most important early church fathers, so not the apostles, but after them. He is a saint. He's also a doctor of the church. For those non-Catholics and Catholics who don't know, a doctor of the church is not only a saint, it's someone who is considered to have exceeded everyone who's not a doctor at theology. So it's just incredible to be calling Irenaeus a heretic, or someone who in one of the earliest stages of the church is spreading heresy. What is this guy thinking, saying that this is a heretical position? I could show you others. Justin Martyr, also an excellent early Christian philosopher. Let me show you something real quick. I think it's called Dialogue with Trypho. That's right. It's in chapter 5, I know. Yeah, there we go. So let's start here. These philosophers know nothing. The old man, by the way, is a Christian, and Justin is being converted to Christianity by this old man. These philosophers know nothing then about these things, for they cannot tell what a soul is. Justin, it does not appear so. Old man, nor ought it to be called immortal, for if it is immortal, it is plainly unbegotten. Justin, it is both unbegotten and immortal, according to some who are styled Platonists. Old man, do you also say that the world is also unbegotten? Justin, some say so. I do not, however, agree with them. Old man, you are right. For what reason has one for supposing that a body so solid, possessing resistance, composite, changeable, decaying, and renewed every day, has not arisen from some cause? But if the world is begotten, souls also are necessarily begotten, and perhaps at one time they were not in existence, for they were made on account of men and other living creatures. If you will say that they have been begotten wholly apart and not along with their respective bodies. Justin, this seems to be correct. Old man, they are not then immortal. Justin, no, since the world has appeared to us to be begotten. So Justin is denying the immortality of the soul. But to skip ahead a little bit, another part of Justin's speech, he says, for this reason souls both die and are punished. So, I mean, that's just two super early church fathers, very orthodox theologians, especially Irenaeus, affirm that souls can and do die. So whether you agree with these early people, it's just absurd to say, firstly, that this is an unchristian belief. Maybe it's a minority belief among Christians, but are you seriously going to say Irenaeus and Justin Martyr are not Christians? Like, go check yourself. They're definitely Christians, and their views are Christian views. Whether they're minority Christian views is a separate matter, and it is a minority view that souls can die. Should it be? I'll leave that up to you. But it is a Christian view, and it's well within the realm of what the Bible actually says. But this whole thing, keep in mind, his soul ceases to have life, his human nature ceased to have life, ceased to function, which it did, like his body was dead, it stopped functioning, ceased to display, ceased to have the attributes of personhood. Again, Edward Fudge did not say these things. He does say that souls die. When did he say that he ceased to have the attributes of personhood? This is putting words in the mouth of Fudge. I mean, he does quote Fudge. This is not a very long page, but he does say, right, that when death occurs, then it is the soul that is deprived of life. Right. That's within the realm of early Christian beliefs. Death is the absence of life. Correct. In fact, even Origen, who was not an annihilationist, Origen said that. The dead person is thoroughly dead until the resurrection. That's what Justin Martyr says in his Apologies. It is deliberately said both that the soul dies, that is destroyed or consumed. I mean, like, it's very clear that Scripture says that. If you want to deny that, that's okay. But it just does not make sense to connect the idea that if a soul ceases to have life, therefore it ceases to have the attributes of personhood. If that is the claim must be substantiated. But again, Fudge didn't say anything about personhood. He just says that souls die. That's just basically quoting the Bible verbatim. But we don't see any sort of explanation. This is Matt Slick's page, so he's welcome to explain further how the soul dying means that it lacks the attributes of personhood. That not all people are the same, right? Like, just because you lack some functions that other people have doesn't mean you're not a person, right? If I donate my kidney, okay, now I have one kidney. Well, most people have two kidneys. Okay, but I'm still a person, right? Babies in the womb, I'm sure Matt Slick would say that a zygote that is just conceived as a human, okay, but it lacks the body parts that other humans do. Is it still a person? Yes. Just because you lack some attributes that other people have, including life, doesn't mean that you don't exist. Obviously, our souls and our bodies continue to exist in a physical and metaphysical, soulful way after we die. They do exist. So it doesn't make sense to say that your personhood ceases to exist. And this is not a scriptural argument, is it? You know, he said this is the first time that he really makes this argument in this article, that it ceases to have the attributes of personhood. He never cites scripture as to how if a soul dies, then you cease to be a person. That's not a scripturally substantiated view. So this isn't a good argument. I think he stole this from, what's that guy's name? Robert. It's slipping my mind right now. It's Robert somebody, is a traditionalist scholar who's argued against Edward Fudge's views. But it's just a nonsense argument. And if you're a traditionalist, I understand you might not like Edward Fudge, but just, let's be intellectually consistent. Where did he get the idea that if your soul dies, then you no longer have the attributes of personhood? This is a claim. The claim requires substance. If you truly have, as a traditionalist, the more correct, orthodox, and scriptural view, you should be able to show me where scripture says that if the soul dies, that means you have ceased to have the attributes of personhood. And you're never going to be able to, because such a concept is not explained in scripture. This is just an inference, and it's not a very good one. Just because a person lacks the functions, including life, that other people have, doesn't mean they're dead. I mean, if you cease to be a person when you die, how can God resurrect you? He wouldn't be resurrecting you. He wouldn't be raising you from the dead. He would be recreating you. A person that didn't exist comes back into existence. Rather, it makes a lot more sense to say that when you die, Scripture does say that your soul dies, that you do still exist. As the physical existence of your body, like when you die, do you wink out of existence? No. So death does not mean non-existence. And that is exactly the issue. That this is it's an argument that's designed to make conditionalists, or you could say annihilationists, look bad. And it does if you take it at face value. But again, every argument, no matter what your viewpoint is, look for the assumptions and the assertions, right? If your soul ceases to have life, then it is true, his human nature ceased to have life, true. Therefore, you cease to have the attributes of personhood. There it is. There's the slick little claim that cannot be substantiated from Scripture. This is just a philosophical argument that doesn't make sense. I could go on, but I'd be repeating myself, so I think I'm going to cut the video short there. I hope that helped people, and I have nothing against Matt in particular, but this is a real dud of an argument, and he really needs to expand it if this is really correct.